Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to another powerful episode of Leading Our Own Way. Today, I interviewed a man called Matt Charles. Matt Charles is in charge of a dojo called Casey Elite Martial Arts, the biggest martial arts business in Australia. Competes on a world championship level and has been through some of the most scariest things you'll ever encounter in your life. From attempted murder, sexual abuse, the physical abuse, daily encounters with each of these subjects as a child from the tender age of 3, and it didn't end. He had to change his life. He had to lose loved ones in order to meet his purpose and to identify a sense of belonging in his own reality. He definitely leads his own way. It's a powerful episode, and it's a long episode, but it couldn't be any shorter. It could only be longer. You have to stay for this one. We also discuss, forgot to mention, time travel. I get shivers thinking about it. You'll be able to relate with Matt so much and connect with him on every level. He has a lot of inspirational quotes that I just have to share with you, and they're right at the end of the episode. So stick with it and stay with us, and you'll absolutely fall in love with Matt. Yeah, another great episode of Leading Our Own Way coming right back after the 21 seconds. Welcome to Leading Our Own Way. I'm your host, Andrew White, and this is the podcast that unveils captivating narratives of resilience and personal triumph. This podcast is for anyone seeking inspiration and insights on overcoming life's challenges. Follow and subscribe, and then we can lead together forever. Matt, good morning. How are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. Thanks for having me on today. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you for joining me on Leading Our Own Way. But before we do start, I do have to say, after our chat a few weeks ago, you have to be probably one of the hardest men I have ever met in my entire life. We will go deep into it, I know, and I don't necessarily just mean in the physical sense, but and that will obviously become very clear very shortly. But in terms of what your journey has been since being very young. However, I'm going to start the episode slightly different. I want the viewers to get a sense of what they're going to hear today from you. If we could put that into one word or one category or one phrase, for the viewers, what do you think they're going to hear today? What would be the best way to sum it up?
I'd say against all odds would probably be the best way that I could sum it, keeping it as short as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, against all odds, because essentially I was, through the story today, you'll find out that I was the boy who couldn't talk, who ended up becoming a teacher, and the man who couldn't walk, who fought for a world title.
Wow. Oh, I've got goosebumps already. I know, seriously, it just came up on my arm. Well, that's going to keep people for sure. All right, Matt. Well, first of all, thanks for joining us on Leading Our Own Way. I tend to start with, how are you leading your own way today?
Today, I own Casey Elite Martial Arts. It's a martial arts school: karate, kickboxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA. We've been running since I took over the school in 2006, and so that's been nearly 18 years now. We've got numerous state, national champions, international contenders, and have done for many, many years. Each year, of course, the club gets bigger and stronger. I started off not as a competitor, but then became a competitor, did very, very well. Now with students are the ones who are excelling the most, which is just awesome, which is what every teacher should want for their members. I'm a very stout family man as well. My family means everything to me. So I guess that is probably the most successful part of my life now. So with that, my martial arts, of course, which has become my full time job, if you could call it that. Mind you, I don't work a day in my life. Um, I think that's to be said for anyone who's able to make a living out of what it is that they love the most.
Yeah, beautiful. That's awesome. How do you prepare yourself mentally for the day each day? Do you have a typical routine that you get yourself into,
Uh, well,
or mindset?
yeah, look, I think now it's pretty much an automatic process. I don't have to put a lot of effort into it. Although in the early days when I first opened my school, I remember because we were in a little hall and I'd turn up with my trailer full of mats and equipment, spend a bit of time putting all the mats down, get everything ready. And then my wife would be sitting by my side saying, "Don't worry, you can do it. Just focus on what it is that you love. And when people start walking through the door, just greet them, say hello. They're going to love what it is that you do." Um, and that sort of little ritual that we used to do was because I had such bad anxiety and such bad, um, such a such a fear, I suppose, of not just people, but getting myself out there. Um, that started to get easier and easier and easier. So these days, um, it is more of an automatic process, I suppose. I don't need to put a lot of effort into it, but back in the early days, yeah, I did. It, it, it was tough.
So it used to be tough, but now it's an automatic process. You make it sound very simple, but there's obviously a journey within that. What's changed from being that day where your wife motivates you every morning to a point where now it's automatic? Because that's quite key, isn't it?
It is. Um, I think it comes down to repetition, and like all martial arts training, that's exactly what it boils down to is repetition.
Mm.
Um, constantly reinforcing the positive. Um, what I used to find when I was younger was if I didn't put into practice every single day and every single small choice that I made something that was going to make my life better, then things would just get worse and worse and worse. I think the mind has got a funny way of snowballing when you don't take control of things, when you don't take control of your mind.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's neuroplasticity, training the brain, rewiring the brain, thinking about mindset. It can work for you, or it can work against you. If you have that
absolutely.
negative mindset, you will walk down that road of negativity, right? And but if you train your brain those small, simple steps, like you've just said, we tend to change. We only tend to see the things, the positive things in our life, and the direction we would desire, our desire is to go into, if that makes sense. And that's exactly
Mm.
what you've done. And yeah, it's fascinating. So how are you physically then? Because I know you've put your body through a hell of a lot over the years. How are you physically at the moment?
A little bit broken, a little bit busted. I've got, or just since I retired in 2018, when I say retired, retired from competing.
Yeah.
Um, just to sort of give a bit of context to it, I was born with a narrow spinal canal, and I developed a condition called spinal stenosis, which is the narrowing of the spinal cord. So any impingements on that spinal chain tend to cause a lot of issues. When I was younger, I think the first injury that I had with my spine was when I was about 14 years old.
Mm.
Um, and that caused a bulging disc, which pressed against the nerves, and I had that surgically repaired when I was 16. Um, and then when I was 20, this is going back now, I think 23, I had an accident, and that caused three further disc bulges in my lower back. which are all pressing against my spinal cord. And that pretty much shut me down. I couldn't walk for about 12 months. Waiting for surgery, waiting for somebody who would take it on um, was a bit of a chore. So in that time, I developed a large degree of swelling and bruising of my spinal cord. Finally got that repaired, and then I had surgery again 7 years later, then another 7 years later. And in between all of this time, I'm trying to train. I'm trying to do what it is that I normally do, trying to work. And then I ended up with a good run from 2009 up until 20, 2015, 2016. Things went really, really well. So that's when I decided to commit to as much training as I possibly could, and basically become a full-time athlete while I was running the school as well. At the end of my career, uh, in the last couple of years of my endeavour to fight in the World Championship and to do all the endurance fighting, which I guess our system is quite famous for, and I'll explain a little bit more about that soon.
Mm.
Towards the end of that, my spine basically just gave. I ended up having to have a fusion at L5F1. Uh, that was quite a devastating thing to have happen.
Mm.
And then that sort of snowballed into quite a lot of other things as well. So the fusion itself didn't work. So I had to have that again in 11 months after the first date. So I went in from behind the first one. I went in on the front with the second one. It all sort of panned out okay, but I ended up with quite a degree of nerve damage and a lot of muscle wasting as well. Just when I thought I was over all of that, about 12 months ago, sorry, about 2 years ago, I started to have more pain in my legs again. So I went and saw my surgeon, and he said, look, we need to look at other areas. So he said, can I get a scan of your neck? And I said, yeah, no worries at all. And then he called me up and said, look, can you do me a favour? Can you come straight to hospital now? We found something in your neck, which is a bit of a concern. Don't worry too much about it. Don't worry about an ambulance, but just get here as fast as you can.
Oh, wow.
So I did, and he said that I've got 2 disc bulges in my neck, which were causing, because I was starting to lose sensation in my arms as well, which was a concern. So I had 2 disc bulges in my neck. We had to get those fixed, and of course they were pressing against my spinal cord as well, which anything below that was starting to become highly inflamed. So got that surgery done, and I've basically been recovering from that ever since. And it did take quite a toll. It meant an end to my physical journey, I suppose. Not a complete end. I'm still on the way through that now.
Mm.
But it just meant being on painkillers again, trying to cope with life not being the athlete that I wanted to be, trying to find a new identity at the same time as well.
Yeah.
So all of that sort of compounded in a very, very short amount of time.
So with everything you just said there, Matt, did you have any pain in your neck when you made that phone call to your surgeon?
It's funny. It wasn't so much direct pain in my neck, but I felt pressure. And what was sort of happening up until that point was a few funny things, like my handwriting started to get really, really bad.
Oh.
I was dropping things all the time. I was, my dexterity wasn't as good as it normally would be. But because I was so heavily medicated, this is also sort of part of the story as well, because I was so heavily medicated, there was a lot that I didn't feel. There was a lot that I didn't know. I'd been on a drug called OxyContin and oxycodone, which are basically the same thing. One's a slow release, one's a fast release. But because of the succession of injuries that I had, my tolerance was getting higher and higher and higher. So the doctor's answers, which when it comes to pharmaceuticals, they just keep taking more and more and more. So by the time the issue with my neck came around, I didn't feel a whole lot. All I could sort of feel was lack of sensation in my legs. It was extra pain in my legs, and just the dexterity issues and the pressure that I could feel in it. So everything had been masked a lot up until that point.
Yeah, wow. So we've gone through quite a lot in terms of how you've what you put your body through, and your business being one of the most successful martial arts. We're going to come back to your business. I feel like it's important because if I'm listening to this episode, I'm thinking it's about the breakdown of your body and how successful you are. Your journey goes, I mean, a million times way deeper than everything we've discussed so far. So we're gonna come back to Casey Elite Martial Arts towards the end, because I really can't wait to share how successful that is and how big that is, and the world level competitions you've been to on that. But let's go back to the beginning of the journey, Matt, where it really kind of started for you, where your life started, and this is where it scared the living daylights out of me when we first met. Just quickly to paint a picture for the viewers as well, you were introduced to me by my debut episode guest, Jake Ward. You have a connection just briefly, how do you have a connection with Jake?
We used to both train together at a gym in Cranbourne. He was preparing for one of his epic runs.
Yep.
And I think at that point I was preparing for, the Australian Championship, or I think I was going for my first attempt at the Worlds. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but we started training together there.
Yeah.
And we of course got along like a house on fire. I ended up doing a fundraiser, a 12-hour fight. I ended up fighting nearly 300 rounds for charity for a good friend of mine, and Jake came in to not just to support. He actually got in the ring and fought me as well. So basically, it was touted that for 12 hours, whoever walked in the door, I was going to fight anybody. So whether it was kickboxing, BJJ, full contact karate, or if it was just somebody who was a hack, I was going to get in there and fight everybody, which I did, and I did well. But that was sort of one of the endurance fighting things that I was alluding to before. Yeah. So that was my introduction to the great Jake Ward.
Please tell me Jake didn't beat you.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Well, there you go, Jake. It's on air now, mate. You lost. Okay. So yeah, because I mentioned that I was interviewing you to him, and he said how unbelievable the story is. And when I mentioned that to you, you said he doesn't actually know the full story. Is that correct?
That's right.
Wow.
That's right.
So Jake,
I didn't share a lot with people a number of years ago, and I suppose it's one of those things that once you start to delve in, it does get a little bit heavy at times for people. Especially from where my beginnings are. But I think for Jake it was more so a case of he knew a little about the physical stuff that I'd gone through. He knew about my hip issues, because he's got hip issues as well, obviously from the endurance stuff that he used to do. So we both sort of had that sort of common thing, and I think both of us were racing against each other to see who was going to get the hips replaced first.
So you're both to blame.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Jake better be sat on the edge of his seat then, because he doesn't know where we're going to go with it. So, well, I think you just mentioned about it being heavy, and this is why we've created this safe space for people to tune in and listen to you being vulnerable. And I want people to hear the depth of where you've been through, because then they can reflect on where you are and the power within that messy middle. So where does your journey begin, Matt?
All began a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. The Earth was just beginning to form. I grew up in a little town called Bidwell in New South Wales. That's in the west of Sydney, kind of near Penrith. It's been touted as one of the worst suburbs in the country, and it was basically a giant housing estate built way back in the 70s. I was, I think, 4 years old when we first moved there. My mother was a single mother. She had substance abuse issues. She was an alcoholic by that age as well, and she was single with 3 kids, and obviously didn't do very well coping. We, all 3 of us at that stage, because there was three of us then. My older brother, who was a year older than me, and my younger sister, who was 2 years younger than me. And of course, my mum all lived in this little unit in Bidwell. Life back then was very, very rough. It was not only just a rough neighbourhood, but my mother was obviously very distracted with her own issues and her own upbringing. When you associate these types of trauma, abuse and neglect to somebody who you want to be somebody, a mother, a father, a son, or whatever, it can be a lot harder. But I found that disassociating, I suppose, is probably a loose term, and seeing them as a person, and everybody is the way they are for a reason. That kind of helps me to dissect things a little bit more and understand things a little bit more. And when I see it just as a person, then it makes it not so much easier to forgive, but easier to understand. My mother had tried to, for lack of a better term, dispose of us in numerous different ways, through either physical abuse or other more severe attempts on our lives. And we had been subjected to that for quite some time before eventually we had been collected by child protective services and then placed in foster homes and state homes and then of course back to my mother again. So that was.
So Matt, let's go back then slightly before we get to the journey of the child protection. You said about attempts on life, but the stage before that, you said it was the abuse. Could you paint a picture of how that would look for you and your family?
Sure. My mum was trying to find somebody to take over things for her. She was trying to find a bloke. So she'd be out every night at the pub. She'd come home with somebody different every night. I never remember anybody else coming into the home and causing us any pain or trauma. So I guess she'd sort of done okay on that part, but she would instigate it all herself. She was very, very physical in a sense that she would physically assault us quite a lot. There were times where I would be in bed, I'd hear her come home from the pub. She'd be screaming, ranting, come up the stairs. And of course, at that stage, we'd both be hiding under our blankets. I was sharing a room with my brother. He'd just pretend to be asleep. She'd come into the room and I would say something to her. And then she would just sit on the bed and then just start hitting, scratching, pulling my hair. And then it got the point that I could remember that it would stop would be either when I was knocked out, because she would pick me up and throw me against the wall, or strike me over the head with something, with either her fist or whatever it was that she had in her hand. it was hard to accept as I got older. When I was younger, it didn't feel, it didn't, I mean, it certainly didn't feel right, but it didn't cause me as much emotional grief then as it did when I got older.
Yeah.
I just kind of accepted that my life was what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, she got to the point where she ended up throwing me over a staircase. And then it sort of culminated when she beat me so badly that she then picked me, wrapped me up in a blanket, ran across to the highway, put me on the side of the road and called an ambulance. And then when the ambulance came, she told them that I'd been hit by a car.
God, I'm trying to imagine that day of how that would appear. Was you confused why she would have done that?
I was. But again, it was one of those things. I mean, at that time, I was maybe 5 or 6 years old.
Oh.
I would. It was kind of funny because in those dark moments, there was always something else. There was always, at the end of an abusive session, there was love and hugs and sorry and things that would kind of make me feel like I was special because I was finally starting to get the attention from her that I'd craved. So it was kind of, yeah. When I'm thinking about it now, back then it was almost like it was worth going through all of that to get the love and attention at the end of it all. And that would last for 3 or 4 days before the cycle started again. Things got quite bad at certain stages. And it was kind of funny too. When I think about what she did to me personally, and then what it was that I witnessed her doing to my brother, as an adult, that affair affected me a lot more. That was something that, when I reflect upon that now, I get more anxiety thinking about trying to save my brother than I did trying to save myself.
How did that look differently to your brother, from you to your brother then?
I guess I kind of felt like I had a little bit more control, and it was the only time that I would defend. When it was against me, I kind of felt like it was that I could handle it, that I could take it. But when it was my brother, he would basically just curl up in a little ball and not defend himself and not protect himself. I came home one day. I came up the stairs into the there was like a common bathroom upstairs, and my brother was. I saw my mother sitting on the edge of the bath, and she was talking to herself. And then when I walked over into the bath, and I could see legs that were fully clothed. And then I realised that she had my brother in the bath in the water and was holding his head under the water. I remember seeing his eyes, because he had these big blue eyes. And I remember seeing his eyes just wide open, bubbles coming out of his nose, and he wasn't trying to, it appeared to me that he wasn't trying to save himself at all. And I remember jumping on her and pulling her hair and scratching at her and trying to get her to stop. And she wasn't responding to any of it. It was almost like she was just in this state. But then at the end of it all, she would pull him out of the bath, put him on the side, he'd cough out the water, and then she'd hold him, tell him that she loved him and everything else. And, the same old, where first the abuse and then the love. And then, of course, everything was okay. And then a couple of weeks after that, or a month, the time is a little bit sketchy for me. She tried that. She tried to drown me as well. But I fought back as hard as I could, ended up biting her finger. And that's when she pulled me out of the bath and threw me over the staircase, which was basically a full story drop. And then, of course, that was when she tried to say that I'd been hit by a car. I've got a stutter today from whether it's just from that event or as an accumulation. After that, after I came back from the hospital, I ended up losing all my hair through shock. I can grow hair now, but I was a little boy with no hair at that stage, and I couldn't talk. And it took maybe 2 years before I could start to string sentences together. And then, of course, I had a horrible stutter for most of my life. I've still got it now, but it's not as bad now. But it takes a lot of work, but it takes a lot of trying to think of what I want to say before I actually say it and try to formulate things. Get stuck on words at times. But that's just a little remnant of it. But if that's all I've got at the end of the day, then, I suppose I kind of did okay.
Oh, mate, did more than okay with that. Jesus. So that period of where you weren't talking, was that through confidence, anxiety, depression, fear, all of that, or was there actually any neurological damage, do you think?
I'm not too sure. I
Okay.
have never had a brain scan.
Mm-hmm.
My wife has sort of been saying to me, you really should get a scan and see where things are at.
Mm.
I'm in two minds about it because every time I have a scan, I ended up having to go to hospital, have something operated on. So I'm a little bit iffy about it.
I understand that.
From what I can deduct myself, it would have, I dare say, from the shock, and of course anxiety would have caused most of it because I can overcome it. It just takes constant work.
Yeah. Whew. Where do you go from that? When you were at the side of the road, did anyone ask you questions? Did the police or the ambulance service ask you questions about the car even? Were you open to talk, go, no, that was not the truth. My mum did this and brought me down here. How did that unravel? Like, how did that come out? How did you get out of that?
Well, I had this terrible habit of telling the truth when I was a kid.
Terrible
I
habit.
I used to be really good at it. She did try to fabricate stories. I knew that she did. I would always tell the truth. From hospital, I ended up going into a children's home, and then my brother and sister did as well. So I guess that answers the question that they weren't buying the story that she was giving to them.
Yeah.
So she ended up losing all three of us for a while. We ended up in a place called Burnside Children's Home, which was a Catholic a Catholic children's home. I can't remember exactly how long we were there for, but it would have, rough estimate was maybe 3 or 4 months. And then from there, we ended up going to stay with my auntie for a period of time until something horrible happened there. But and then I ended up back at my mother's place. It was only through the circumstances of what happened to my auntie at that time that I ended up going back to my mother's. And then a little while after that was when she met my now stepfather, who's now passed away. She met him at the pub, and then he moved in. And once he moved in, then he was responsible for all the punishment, and she kind of took a step back from there.
So did your relationship with your mother improve because the attacks, the abuse moved over to the stepfather role, or did it stay the same? Or
look, it kind of stayed the same.
Mm.
All of us were, I suppose, just what would be the right term? All of us were just there. I suppose it's not like none of us were wanted. None of us were
You're in the way.
Yeah, we were all in the way, but it was kind of funny when my stepfather came onto the scene. Things did improve, and they improved a lot. I think just because it seemed that Mum was happy, so of course in turn we were all happy. And it wasn't for maybe a year or so, I'm guessing, that he started to get very physical as well. But his physical side was a lot different. His was more standardized punishment. It was more emotional abuse,
Yeah.
and more structured in a sense of that the beltings that we received were always with a belt and always belted on the backside and legs. He never hit us on the head. Never threw me against the wall, all those types of things. So it was kind of, we'd gone from very traumatic abuse to traumatic punishment.
Yeah.
So I suppose you could say it that way. And that continued right up until I was 16. Well, pretty much when I was 14. When I was 16, I started to fight back. And he started to get older, so he couldn't do as much. But and of course the frequency of it slowed down. But right up until then, he was a daily source of anxiety, a daily source of abuse. And my mother was more than happy for him to take that.
Yeah, wow. Was there any more attempts on your life, your brothers and your life when he came in? And maybe not from him, but still from your mother. Was there any other examples of that occurring?
Yes, it was. I watched my mother one time. I remember just coming out of my bedroom. It was a Saturday morning. My stepdad had gone, because he was a plumber at the time, and he had gone across the road to the shops because we'd moved out of Bidwell and we'd moved to a place called Dundas. And across the road from us was like a street strip of shops. It was like a fish and chip shop and a milk bar and pharmacy and all those things. He was over at the fish and chip shop doing some plumbing for them that had already been planned. So it was Saturday morning. I was getting up, ready to go into the lounge room and watch the Looney Tunes and all of that, expecting to see my brother in there as well. And I walked past my mother's bedroom, and she was sitting on the edge of the bed with David in tears. And when I looked, she had a knife at his throat.
Join us tomorrow to hear more from today's incredible guests and learn valuable insights to help you lead your own way. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you then.